is super useful. But my immediate thought is that at what stage, where do we draw the line just with the ease of privacy invasion and everything about us being recorded at all moments?
Welcome to the Kingspiration podcast. This is the place where you'll learn how to get unstuck and gain momentum in your life and business. Each week, we tackle the real aspects of entrepreneurship, personal development, relationships, and fitness. I'm your co-host, Ethan King from Atlanta, Georgia, USA, entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and best-selling author of Wealth Beyond Money.
And I'm your co-host, Justin King, no relation to Ethan, from Cape Town, South Africa, entrepreneur, speaker, and business growth strategist. Our journey crosses continents and cultures, sharing wisdom and experiences to propel you forward. Welcome to Kingspiration. Let's start the conversation.
All right, welcome back to another episode. And today, Justin and I have been talking about how to get more clarity around goals in your life and actually achieving those goals and making them tangible. And there's a difference. And what we're trying to do here is put words around the difference between when you just have a vague goal, like maybe you read a book or you were inspired by a movie or something. You're like, oh, I want that in my life, compared to when you know an actual person who has walked that path and you can speak to that person and they become a sort of mentor of yours, whether it's a long-term or a short-term mentorship or a conversation. But that makes the goal so much more tangible and within reach when you know someone and you've actually had a conversation with them. And the reason I brought it up, there have been a couple of recent experiences in my life where this has become like a major aha to me. One, I just witnessed my dad. He became a bishop in the AME church, which is a big deal because I've witnessed him. I mean, he's technically my stepdad, but he raised me since I was like 5. So over the past 40 years, I've seen him pursue his goal of becoming a bishop. And he did that. And it was a long play, going from a preacher of a little church to reaching the pinnacle of his career and his dream is a big deal. And I think that's what all of us want in whatever our respective career is. So one thing I learned, though, is that he had mentors along the way. A lot of these guys have passed on now, but they've been older gentlemen who took him under his wing and showed him the ropes. And it was just a genuine friendship and relationship. But you learn so much more from mentors who have paved the way in front of you versus someone who's just a coach, or versus just reading a book or going to a conference or something like that. There's 10x more benefit to actual knowing someone and having an actual mentor.
I think the idea of a coach and a mentor are fundamentally different, and I think they serve their own right. They really serve their own purposes in a lot of ways. Love the idea of a mentor. And what I'm trying to get at, it's actually less about the mentor necessarily giving you the steps to follow in order to achieve something, but rather just the comfort that one takes from the fact that I'm speaking to somebody who has succeeded in the exact journey that I want to succeed in. And that makes it so much more real. The success, that ultimate destination that they've got to, which is where I'm wanting to get to. They've lived it, they've breathed it, they're living evidence of the fact that it's possible. And that suddenly just makes a world of difference to your own belief in the ability to get there. Because you and I were chatting now, and you were sharing the story around somebody who was mentoring you around speaking, and how you wanting to grow your speaking career. And what stood out for me as you were sharing that with me, it wasn't about you saying that this individual was giving you the steps, because you know a lot of the steps that you need to take. But you got incredibly excited when you were speaking to me about what he earns annually by doing 3 gigs per month. Yeah. And you were like, mind blown. Holy shit. It's so possible. It's crazy. And it's got me way more excited about chasing this than I was previously. So that stood out for me because, as I say, it was less about them telling you the how to and just about, they've taken you from preached it to reached it because they you know what I mean? It's so real. There's somebody I can touch. This person is living my dream. Man, that's excited me. So I don't know if I'm articulating that well, but that stood out as we were chatting.
Yeah, no, it's perfect because I could have done the math, and of course I have goals, being a highly paid speaker, but when I met this guy at a dinner, and actually it was just a natural conversation, and I told him what I was doing, and I guess he could see my excitement, my enthusiasm, and he just poured into me. He's 20 years ahead of me in this whole world of speaking. But he's like, yeah, I mean, I speak 3 times a month and make over $1 million. I won't say who it is because people try to count people's pockets, but he is living his dream. That's what he wants to do. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I'm happy for him. And I have someone that, if I'm not saying I want to go that exact same route, not that I don't want to have a business built behind it as well in doing what I'm doing, but to see someone like that shining as a shining example, and he just happens to live a few miles away from me, very, very well-known figure, and we've become friends. So it's good. You want to say something?
Yeah. Question. If you had sat down at dinner and instead of meeting this gent, you had met Simon Sinek, and you got speaking about speaking, and you shared your goals, and he was like, hey man, I do 1 gig a month and I'm earning $1 million. I do 1 gig every 6, whatever he charges. Would it have made you as excited? I've got a theory in my mind about where I'm going with this question, but would it have made you as excited?
You mean like if I already knew he was Simon Sinek before you talking
exactly.
to him?
Yeah, you knew who he was.
Yeah, I don't think it would have had the same effect because I kind of if I already knew about him, like, oh yeah, okay, of course, you're Simon Sinek. I think it was because I didn't know this guy, and it was like, oh, the average everyday Joe can do this. Yeah. I mean, and not to like put him down because he's certainly not the average everyday Joe, but I had never heard of him, and probably most people have never heard of him. But he's found a niche market that he speaks to. And they pay him very well to come do keynotes, and he does a fantastic job. So you don't have to be a celebrity or known by a billion people, but you can be, relatively the guy, the millionaire next door, the billionaire next door, whatever. Yeah. You don't have to be famous to have the wealth and to be living the dream you want to live.
And I know exactly what you were meaning by saying average to Joe. It's not a disparaging remark. I think that's what's standing out here for me. It makes it that much more real for us to realize and see that, hey man, people that are just like me can achieve this. Because when we just look at celebrities and well-known individuals, that seems unattainable. So it would be amazing to have somebody like Simon Sinek as a mentor. Don't get me wrong, but it's like that's Simon Sinek. I mean, of course he's able to charge that, and of course he can do that. But when you're just meeting somebody who's just like you and me, and you're like, what? You achieved it? I've never really heard of you. Okay, man, you can. I can do it. So there's something to that as well, as having somebody who's not necessarily got this huge status also being able to share with you what they have achieved. That I think it will inspire individuals to say, right, man, if you can do it, so can I. Yeah, it puts it within reach.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's slightly tangential, but even when it comes to speaking, I've had a lot of people tell me that, after a speech that I'm very relatable. And I think it is because of this. It's because you didn't know me going in. Whereas there may have been other people, let's say I'm speaking at a conference and there are other speakers. There's this one conference. I don't want to put this guy down, but there was a very high profile speaker so I opened the conference and I was very unknown. I'm still very unknown, but I was definitely way more unknown at that time. And then the guy who closed the conference was a pretty big name speaker who they brought in for a lot of money. He's accomplished some big things in life, but he did not connect with the audience. He got very, very low scores because he wasn't relatable. And so many people told me, and even the feedback scores came back. I got like a 9.5. He got like a 6. And they paid him a lot more money because of his name. But people told me, so many comments said that I was relatable. But I think it's because, so there's an advantage in not being known. And yes, I get inspiration meeting people who have achieved something, who are not public figures. That's another aha moment for me today talking to you, Justin.
Yeah, and I think I'm having the same thing right now because, and again, as a speaker as well, you start taking comfort, and it's exciting to think, okay, this can be a bit of a secret weapon. It's this ability. What you do have to have is credibility. That's not going to change. But how can you have credibility and be relatable? And I think that's quite a superpower as somebody who's standing on a stage and trying to connect with an audience. So make sure that you're credible with regards to whatever you're speaking about. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
But then if you're still relatable enough because you haven't separated yourself from the herd by being a public figure as such, there's something to that I think a lot of people can come from.
Yeah, because if you're a public figure, it's like you're on this pedestal mentally, and you're out of reach, and it's almost like that discredits whatever you're teaching. It's like, oh yeah, of course you can do that. You're Michael Jordan, or of course you can do that. You're Barack Obama, whatever. So it's this automatic discrediting that happens in our brains. But when it's someone who's the guy down the street, the girl next door, you're like, oh crap, I can do that too. And I think that's even like why people like Sarah Blakely, who invented Spanx, the billionaire, she's so relatable because she was just the goofy comedian chick who was like, she has this whole like goofy girl next door vibe, and even still has maintained it to this day. If you like follow her on Instagram, it's just her genuine personality. But I think that's why she resonates with so many people, because it's just like, if I could do this, you can do this too. So I think that's a great takeaway. It's a little bit of a tangent from what we were talking about with the mentorship slightly. So how, if our listeners are thinking, well, how do I get a mentor? What advice would you give them?
I'd be proactive in finding one. I think I think that's the easiest and best advice. Be clear in your own mind what you're wanting from a mentor. That would be number one. So what would you want this mentor to help you achieve? And in this context that we're speaking about, in theory, what would be on top of your list is somebody who has achieved what I'm wanting to achieve. So in your example, it's a speaker who has achieved the kind of, not necessarily status, but the kind of ability to charge the fees that I'm wanting to achieve. Tick, that's got to be number one. And then when you find somebody like that, be willing to ask them, because a mentorship is actually quite a proactive role. Being a mentor and a mentee, the relationship doesn't always necessarily, it's more just a friendship. If you're just meeting for coffee, it becomes a mentorship when the mentor knows they're playing a mentorship role. I think that is one of the keys as well. So asking them to be that for you, and then setting time aside, and when you're meeting, having a proactive, structured agenda that you want to work through and some questions that you're wanting to ask. And that's a proper mentorship relationship.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Sometimes it's not only because I wasn't setting out. I didn't go to this dinner like, oh, I'm going to get a mentor. It kind of happened serendipitously. I happened to be sitting next to this guy, but I was enthusiastically just sharing my life and my goals. And I think when people see that passion in you, that would be the next thing. Like, be enthusiastic about sharing what it is that you're up to, because you never know who you're talking to, right? I didn't know that I was talking to this guy and that we would end up with a relationship. So be enthusiastic about sharing your goals. And then the other point that I would add is to approach it from a giving standpoint versus a taking standpoint. Because at the end of the dinner, when we connected, he was actually asking me about AI, because he didn't know a lot about AI. And he knew that I was just finishing my book, the ChatGPT to Double Your Business in 90 Days book. And he was like, hey, I'd like to learn more about it. And I was like, I'd be happy to jump on a Zoom. But when we jumped on the Zoom, he was just talking to me about public speaking and his journey. And at the end, I'm like, do you want to know anything? He was like, no, I get to that. He just really enjoyed pouring into me, and actually never even asked me about the AI stuff. But I was really approaching it from a giving standpoint, not a receiving.
I like that. So maybe I was looking at it too much from a very theoretical standpoint of a mentor. But what you're saying, and I really love this, is always be on the lookout for mentorship moments. And a mentorship moment could either be one where you're able to mentor, and it could be just in a conversation at a dinner table where there's an exchange of value in that conversation. And that's a mentorship moment. I like that. I'm going to keep that top of mind for myself.
Well, this has been good. Great conversation. I think we left the listeners with some tangible steps here about how to get a mentor, and also to just not be afraid of sharing and being that relatable person. So being on the other side of it, you don't have to be a public figure. You don't have to be famous, but your superpower can be just being the normal guy next door, right?
What a release of pressure. That's amazing. I love that as a takeaway.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Kingspiration. We hope this conversation sparked insights to ignite action in your life and business.
We're on this journey together, sharing our challenges and successes to help all of us take the next step towards building momentum and ultimately reaching our goals.
If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit and leave us a 5-star review.
And remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly conversations. Until next time, keep rolling, keep growing, and keep being inspired.